Well, hello there and welcome back. This is Angeles Perez, and I want to ask you a quick question. Why is it that you think your memory is poor? Or perhaps you can remember objects, situations, circumstances in great details that you don't want to, but other things you don't seem to remember any details. Case in point, how many of you know when the last time your heart was broken by somebody, or you were backstabbed, or you were taken advantage of? No problems remembering the details of that situation, right? Yet you can't tell me exactly, if I was to ask the same question about, tell me the details about you taking your college exam and the process of going to someplace routine. Maybe telling me how you get up in the morning and go to work. You have to probably really think about it. It doesn't come really natural. Well, this is all due not to bad memory. This is just basically how your mind processes and stores what it considers important information and trivial stuff. Before we continue, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget the icon bell so you're reminded of upcoming videos in the near future. Also, listen to this video from beginning to end, because if you don't, most likely you're going to miss something very important that you would wish you would have listened to in the first time. So with that, let me go on to what is this thing? How does the brain, literally, how does the brain, and I'm not talking about the mind, that's two different things. How does the brain, physical brain, the organ, store information? It does it through association, my friends. And that is the reason why you might have bad memory in one part of your life and then really great memory in the other. Now, I'm going to give you a quick biology lesson in how the brain functions. The brain does not record in 2D. The human brain does not remember like that. It remembers in 3D. It remembers in pods. It remembers in communities. And I'm going to give you an example of this. When you start creating memory from a childhood, your brain is using association to store information. So in other words, let's just say you had a bad day at work. You stubbed your toe, or maybe you got fired, you got reprimanded, you got written up. And then for some reason, you're not aware of it consciously at first, but maybe not at all, but you are aware of your feelings. These new feelings pop up: anxiety, embarrassment, regret, maybe perhaps even anger and frustration. Those feelings just start to swell up. Those feelings are not technically coming from the moment of your bad day or bad moment. This is coming from the past. So let's just go back to the past. Maybe as a young child, you were reprimanded by your parents, by a teacher, by someone of authority. And maybe you, after being reprimanded, you were embarrassed, you were frustrated, you were angry, you were all the same emotions that we associate to the future of you getting fired from your job. Now, these are two different memories from different times in your life, years apart, if not decades. But the point is, they have similar emotional intensity to them, maybe even similar emotions involved. So when your mind starts taking in new information, it takes in, like for the boy or the girl, little boy, little girl who was reprimanded. Okay, these are all the feelings, good and bad, and I'm going to store it here. Now that's a little storage pod. Then in the future, you get fired from a job, or you get reprimanded at the job, you get written up. Well, all the same feelings you have at that moment are very similar to the emotional upswelling that you're feeling also. And that emotional upswelling, where does that come from? The original pod. It takes it from that information way in the beginning of when your brain was starting to develop memory or store memory. Now, the brain will take that similar information, similar feelings, and all the details, 3D, meaning colors, smells, taste, whatever you experienced during that episode of that bad day, it's now stored as a community, part of a starting community with that original pod. So you got another pod of memory, 3D, now associated with that. Now, again, you keep repeating this throughout your life. You have an negative emotional day or moment. And not only does it create its own emotional intensity, baggage, if you want to call it that, it starts going through the mind to look for similar, because it's going to store the information. So it looks for similar communities, similar pods, and then adds it to that. So now a part of your brain is literally all created, the whole community is created. All the pods are put together for one purpose, to relate the same emotions of guilt, of fear, anger, of resentment, betrayal, whatever you felt. They're all similar in that community. So every time you have something similar in the future that happens, it'll be stored in that part of the brain. And when you want to access that information, it comes from that part of the brain. Why would you want to access a bad day? Well, you don't do it consciously. You do it unconsciously. Example, when I said earlier in the video, can you tell me the first person that betrayed you, backstabbed you, broke your heart? Okay, well, you have no problems accessing that information. Why? Because that information is in that community of like feelings. Because the first thing you're going to do when you think about being betrayed, try to remember that time and how you felt. The memories will flood in, and the memories will come up as emotions, not feelings. Those are two different things. When you're having a new episode in your life, good or bad, those feelings are quickly developed. They come organically through the chemical process in your brain, in your body. Those are feelings. Those feelings are then stored as memory. And those memories are called emotions. So now when you have a bad day, you're taking those new feelings and adding them to those old emotions. And it keeps building and building. And then in the future, when something goes back that is similar to that, all of a sudden you have a rush of these emotions, even though those emotions, those feelings are not popping up. The emotions come and replace the feelings that would normally come up for that bad day. You might have a bad day and not be really reacting to it, but those emotions will come up from the past and make you think you're having feelings. When you're just having a memory, you're just recycling old information and accepting it as new feedback, new input. It isn't. So how do you, if you think you got bad memory, or if you want to forget old memories, or at least discard the rush of negative emotions coming into a negative situation, what do? It's very similar. In fact, the process for both, not getting the rush of negative energies or negative memories from the past, negative emotions, and the process of actually remembering something in more details. Again, your mind, going back, remembers things in intense emotional feelings. More intense the emotional feelings, the better the memory. Less intense, less memory. That's why you have trouble remembering unimportant things of the past, boring things of the past, but you remember in stark details those really exciting times of your past, like it happened yesterday, even though they might have happened a half a century ago for some of us. So the process is you want to add a new sensation, a new pod, start up a new community by disengaging from the old one and adding a new one. So how do you do that? Well, it's real simple. Association. It's an NLP or neuro-linguistic programming technique, but it works for my memory, how to remember even trivial things. And at the same time, it helps me to get rid of old emotional baggage that I no longer want to experience. So I'll show you how to do them for both. First one, association. Very simple. Take a penny. How do you remember which face of Lincoln is shown on that penny? Well, I really don't. When I was first asked that question, I didn't know. How would I know? I have 50-50 chance of guessing right. But the person told me, well, think of Lincoln. He was on the side of righteousness. He was right on the side of the law of giving equality to all men. He was right in his convictions on keeping the Union together instead of letting the Civil War destroy the country. He was on the side of right. Well, if you look at the penny, the right side of his face is showing. So now you associate the fact that Lincoln was always working on being right for his country, and that's the right side of his face. It's very trivial, but believe it or not, your mind could remember that for decades if you just use that kind of association. And that's just an example. You can use anything. Say you're really bad with names. You make up your own association. Let's just use the name Karen. Karen sounds like barren. I remember a barren desert as I was talking to Karen. Remember a barren desert as I was talking to Karen. You say that a few times as you're saying her name, chances are it will stick. You'll remember it decades later. But you got to say it a few times as you're learning the person's name. And in a short period of time, I'm talking about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times, minimal, you won't forget it. So that's an example of the penny and the name using association to get better memory. You can do that with anything. If you want to remember specific things, associate it with something that's similar in name or intensity or feeling. Another way, use your feelings. They sometimes are very good in association. Now, that's using association to get good memory. How do you get rid of the bad memories? How do you lessen you don't want to get rid of them. They're there for a reason. You want to keep them because they've taught you something. They may even be protecting you to this day, but you want to lessen the intensity of the emotional drawback to the present. So whenever you start having a day and it's going bad and you get all these emotions that just swell up from it, be mindful, be consciously mindful that what's the difference between the feelings you're getting for that moment of disapproval or frustration or anger and the memories of something that's long dead, long past. You don't need to add, the day is already bad enough. You don't need to add past bad days to it. So once you have to take mental stock of yourself when you go into that day. You got to stop being on autopilot and take over consciously for that moment and ask yourself a simple question. What parts of this is old memory? What parts of this is new feeling? Once you're able to distinguish the two, then you could say to yourself, I don't need the old memories added to these new feelings. I will look at my feelings I'm having now and even take stock in them and say, well, it isn't so bad. This day happened, but it didn't happen to me. It happened for me. So now you start using positive reinforcement and association with the bad day you're having, coupled with conscious stock in which ones are emotion and which ones are true feelings. And the old emotions will stop adding those new or future days you have bad, or stop adding them to that community, that pot. So when I have, like for me, when I have a bad day, my bad days are good days. I've long since learned to associate my misfortunes, my frustrations, my angers with things that are done for me, for my self-development, not to me. So whenever I have a bad day, it's actually going to turn out to be a positive. I never get those old emotional upswells from my old memory. So that's how your brain works. It's far more complicated than this. You can study how the brain works for the rest of your life and never learn it all. But I wanted to get this across to you that poor memory or memorization of anything is not genetic. It's not you're lazy or something's wrong with your brain. It's just a matter of using your brain more effectively by education. The other part is you want to get rid of or lessen the emotional impact of certain old emotions. This is a way to do it. So with that, I hope this has been of value to everybody out there. This is Angeles Perez. Have a great day.